Welcome back to today's video. In today's video, I'm taking a look at a Joe Biden and Donald Trump rematch following the Trump guilty verdict. Now, right before I get into this video, make sure to subscribe button down below and like the video. We're going to get some interesting information in today's video, so do me a favor and hit that subscribe button down below. Let's go into today's video. All right, welcome back to today's video. As we're getting into some of the polling data, taking a look at where exactly Trump and Biden stand. Now, keep in mind that we are looking at polling data following the indictment, the conviction rather, and getting into this polling data. If we're looking at polling data before the indictment, I will let you know. So let's take a look at a Forbes Harris poll. Forbes Harris has a poll that they released on May 31st. It was taken from May 30th to May 31st among 1,006 registered voters. The margin of error for this poll is 3.1%, and it goes into some details here. It really asks several questions in this poll. We will only be looking at a couple of questions, but if you want a full link for the this document in particular, check the link in the description below. I will go ahead and put it in the description. But this is an interesting question here. One of the questions that they asked here: if the 2024 election was held today, who would you vote for, Donald Trump or Joe Biden? Trump is 1% ahead, basically effectively breaks even there. Now, another question that's extremely important is who would you vote for president when you have all five candidates? And it shows that Donald Trump's leading by 2%. And you have some other interesting information with regards to where voters lean, some questions with regards to the indictment and the trial, whether or not they think Trump received a fair trial or not, some possible prison sentences or things like that individuals would like. But those are the two main questions that you're motivated, that you want to really look at, right? Who they vote for president and what exactly are they going to think about the third party candidates, specifically Jill Stein, Cornel West, and RFK. Now, there's another poll that came out from the Morning Consult. Let's take a look at this. The Morning Consult poll. This is a very interesting poll. Let me get rid of that. All right. So the Morning Consult poll, and it shows you some very interesting information. So let's go ahead and zoom down a little bit. All right. So it says here that over half of voters approve of the jurors' decision to convict of the former president for the conviction of the former president. And it also shows that 15% of Republican voters nationwide want Donald Trump to drop his White House bid. Okay. Now, that's 15% of Republicans. Only 8% of Trump supporters said he should do the same. Okay. And so what did they think about imprisonment? 69% of voters said that they should fine Trump. 49% would be put him on probation in terms of what the judge is going to do. Judge Machen, who's obviously in charge of this case, I believe that, I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce his name, Judge Machen. Machen, I believe is how you pronounce his name. He's going to put obviously what his fine or whatever it may be, probation, jail time, whatever it's going to be, on June 11th. So 69% of Americans say that fining Donald Trump would be the most popular. 49% would be put him on probation. So interesting data there. All right. And in general, with regards to who they'd vote for Trump and Biden, Biden's leading by 1%. All right. And then another poll here, I believe this was taken after the conviction, Reuters Ipsos poll. Yeah, this was taken after the conviction. It has a margin of error of 2.1%, and it's taken over the course of May 30th to May 31st. It has more people who they went over. That's obviously a good thing. The Forbes Harris poll went over only 1,066 people, I believe. This poll is 2,556 people. The larger the sample size, the more accurate the polling data will be. So it goes over some interesting information. But it says here, if the election for president were held today and the candidates were Democrat Joe Biden and Republican Donald Trump, for who would you vote for? So this is very interesting. Joe Biden gets 36% of the vote and Donald Trump gets 36% of the vote. Now, this is interesting. Among registered voters, okay? So this was 2,556 people, but only 2,135 of them were actually registered voters. Interesting. 41% say Biden, 39% say Trump. There, Biden is actually leading by 2%. Now, notice something that is extremely interesting. It gives you a breakdown of the individuals who support Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Among the 41% of individuals among all registered voters, again, these are registered voters, okay? 41% said Biden. Let's get a breakdown into that. 81% of the people who said they're going to vote for Biden, of that 41%, are Democrat. 5% are Republican. Move over to Donald Trump. And you see 31% independent. Move over to Donald Trump. 4% Democrat, 82% Republican. So you can see that Donald Trump actually gets less percent of the Democrats. I know it's only by 1%, but just want to tell that to you. And then independent is 31%. So they're basically tied. That being said, Trump leads Biden by 1% among his own base, the Democratic base and the Republican base. All right. So that's interesting. And let's see if there's any other important information. So this is obviously another important information. If the election for president were held today and the candidates were Democratic Joe Biden, Donald Trump, and RFK, this is not including Jill Stein and Cornel West, by the way, 34% of all voters say they'll vote for Joe Biden, 33% for Donald Trump. Among registered voters, 39% for Joe Biden, 37% for Donald Trump. And you get a breakdown into it, and it's effectively the same. All right? And then RFK gets 10% of the vote, okay? And very interesting here, I wanted to talk to you about this as well. RFK, he gets 10% of the vote, right? Notice where he's getting the vote from. 6% of Democrats, 8% of Republicans, 17% of independents. 8% Republican, 6% Democrat, RFK is getting. That kind of gives you some clues into who exactly RFK is taking votes from. All right, so obviously some other interesting information. Again, I think I'll try to pin this, put this in the description below if you want to get more information. But that's some of the main information we wanted to get from that particular piece of that information. All right. So that's some of the main polling. You have some Emerson polls that were taken prior to the conviction. Now, this is from RCP. Let's go ahead and look at the 538. So 538 here. They have here on May 31st a morning consult poll showing Biden ahead by 1 point. Okay. Now, the morning consult poll that they're referring to, I believe, is the same poll that RCP is referring to, the morning consult poll. This poll shows Biden ahead by 1 point. I believe they're talking about the same poll showing Biden ahead by 1 point right over here. So that's one of the polls there. So nothing interesting there in terms of new information. Another one from Ipsos Reuters poll, Biden up 1 point. And again, this poll actually is taking into a three-way race. It's taking into account a three-way race. And you see Biden does do 1 point above Donald Trump in that particular poll. And then in another poll, you see Biden in by 2 points, which is a lot for Joe Biden because Joe Biden's been behind in the polls for quite some time. And again, these were taken from May 30th to May 31st. So these are important polls to think about. Again, this is also a three-way race. They are not including Jill Stein. If they include Jill Stein and Cornel West, you will see Trump doing better due to the fact that Cornel West and Jill Stein are obviously taking voters away from Biden, not Trump. But that is also interesting. Trump versus Biden head-to-head, it's even. It breaks out even. Trump versus Biden, again, Biden's ahead by 2 points. Very interesting. Harris X poll here from Forbes. Trump's ahead by 2 points when you include all 5 candidates, and Trump's ahead by 2 points when you include a Biden head-to-head Trump. Another interesting poll. This was right before the conviction. Right before the conviction on May 29th, about 2 days actually before the conviction. You see Biden was ahead by 10 points and then by 11 points. Okay, by 7 points. This is in New York. Okay, by the way, this is in New York City. What margin did Joe Biden win the state of New York by in 2020? Go ahead and take a look at this. Biden won the state of New York in 2020. I believe we're set to 2020, right? 2020. He won this state by 23.1%. What are the polls saying right now? Biden is ahead by 7% and 10%. Now, you might be saying, oh, the polling data is underestimating Joe Biden. Well, if you go back to 2020, actually, and take a look at the polling data in the state of New York, it actually showed Joe Biden leading by a larger margin than he won the state of New York in 2020. All right? That's very interesting that Biden's only ahead by 7 points, 10 points. Now, could the conviction change stuff? Obviously. But the fact that Joe Biden's only leading by 10 to 7 points is not so much of an alarming sign for the Biden campaign, considering the fact that they will end up winning the state of New York. But it is very interesting how close it's getting, right? All right, so that is for some of those particular polls there. We do see that Biden is doing pretty good in some of these polls. We do see Biden's up by 1 point, 1 point, 2 points, and 2 points. Very interesting there. But taking a look at our electoral map, what exactly are we looking at? Well, we're looking at our electoral map, and we are filling out, obviously, some of the states. Now, what exactly do I think is going to happen? Do I think Biden's going to continue this kind of upward surge compared to where he was before the conviction? Before Trump's conviction, rather. I do not necessarily think so. I think that his surge will dwindle down a little bit. All that being said, do I think the indictment will hurt Trump or help Biden? I'm not really sure. Hurt Trump or help Trump. I'm not really sure at this point. I'm not 100% sure. Convicted felon, could that go a long way? I'm really not sure because we really have to wait for quite some time. If Trump's indictment is going to be compared to the same level that it is going to be to Trump's conviction, then it's obviously not going to be that make that much of a difference. That being said, Donald Trump is obviously going to appeal this to the state Supreme Court in New York, where he could possibly get it overturned. So that is a possibility. If he does get it overturned, that'll definitely help Trump a little bit in the polls. But as of right now, it does look like it is actually. It doesn't really look like we can't really make a decision at this point. Some polls are showing Biden ahead. Some polls are showing Trump ahead. We can't really make so much of a really finite decision at this point. All right, so let's go ahead and fill out several of the states which will vote for the former president and the President Joe Biden. All right, so these are several of our states: Ohio, West Virginia. Ohio will go likely, not safe, but I believe Trump's led by almost around 10 points right now, so I'm going to be putting it in the likely column. Colorado is a state which I'm going to put as being likely. All right, New Mexico is a state which I'm going to be putting as being lean. All right, lean. Utah is going safe to Donald Trump. I know people are going to say Mormon population, Mormon population, Mormon population, but at the end of the day, Mormons, generally speaking, vote for Trump compared to Biden. All right, so these are some other particular states that we want to look at. Nebraska, several of the congressional districts here in the state of Nebraska, all three of them will go to Donald Trump. One of them we will leave blank for now. Joe Biden will win the state of Illinois. The state of Illinois, he will end up winning. Moving on, I'm going to go ahead and give Joe Biden the state of Hawaii as well. So we're going to go ahead and give Joe Biden the state of Hawaii. And for Donald Trump, he's going to win the state of Alaska by a likely margin. The state is not as conservative as some individuals might think, but it is, generally speaking, pro-Donald Trump. All right, Texas is going to go likely for Donald Trump. And Florida will also go as being, I'm going to go ahead and put it as being lean, lean for Donald Trump. I don't think he's going to win the state by like more than 10 points or anything like that. So I'm going to be going ahead and putting it as being lean. I'm not going to put Florida as being likely. I'm just going to go ahead and put it as being lean. Okay. Moving on to New York. New York, I'm going to go ahead and put it as being likely. New Hampshire is going to go ahead and put it as being likely. Vermont is safe. Bernie Sanders' home state. Connecticut, New Jersey is going to go ahead and being likely. Likely. I'm going to put it as being likely. Delaware, Maryland, DC is a congressional district. It'll go safe. Rhode Island, Massachusetts as well. Moving on to the state of Nevada. The state of Nevada, we're going to go ahead and give it to Donald Trump. Donald Trump will win the state of Nevada by simply a tilt margin. He'll also go ahead and win the state of Arizona, also by a tilt margin as well. And Joe Biden will win the state of Minnesota by a tilt margin. Now, why exactly do I think Joe Biden's going to win by a tilt margin, not by a lean margin? Well, the reason why is because I don't think Joe Biden's going to win this state by around 7%, which when you go back to the 2020 election, Minnesota, he ended up winning by 7.1%. Although if you go back to even 2016, for example, in 2016, Hillary Clinton only ended up winning by 1.5%. In 2012, Barack Obama won by around 7.7%, which is around the same margin that Joe Biden won. In 2020, just a 0.6% difference. That being said, I don't think Joe Biden's going to win by as big of a margin. I think that he's going to fall down to around 5% or maybe even 3 or 4%. So I'm going to put it in the tilt margin. Also, the state of Virginia is going to go in the tilt in the let's take a look at this for a second and then we'll get our decision. So Biden's leading by 10.1%. So we're going to go ahead and put this in the lean column, in the lean column for Joe Biden. All right, moving on to our next state here. Our next states, Donald Trump will win Maine's at-large vote by a tilt margin, and he will also win Maine's second congressional district by a safe margin. And Joe Biden will win Maine's first congressional district by a safe margin. All right. Moving on from this, we're going to give Donald Trump the state of Wisconsin by a tilt margin, Michigan by a tilt margin, and the state of Pennsylvania by a tilt margin as well. North Carolina will go to Donald Trump by a lean margin as of right now. I'm going to go ahead and put it as being a lean margin. Not a lean margin, tilt margin. And then Georgia will go as a tilt margin as well. Okay. So these are some of those particular states, and then Nebraska's second is going to go to Donald Trump. Some redistricting has already occurred in this particular state, so we're going to put it in the tilt column. All right, so this is a prediction as of right now: 315 electoral votes for Donald Trump and Joe Biden at 223. As you can see, I don't think this indictment is going to change too much. I'm not totally sure. I know we have some polling data coming out Some polling data showing Biden ahead, one polling data actually showing Trump ahead, and several polling data actually showing Biden in the lead, although he's only ahead by 1%. And I'm not really sure too much about how far this is going to go, how much of a length this is going to take. But this is my current prediction. When you look at most of the polling data in the particular swing states, okay, when you go to the particular swing states, for example, if you go to, let's take a look at Arizona, for instance, you see that Trump's ahead by 4%, right? 4% is quite a lot there in that particular state. So it's probably going to go by a tilt margin. Another state here, the state of Nevada here, the state of Nevada, 5.4%. And again, this is before the indictment. Okay, keep this in mind. All these polls are before the indictment. The state of Nevada. And then, for example, the state of Michigan, you go to this state in particular, Michigan, Trump's ahead by 0.5%. 0.5%, it could dwindle down. That being said, if you go back to 2020, for instance, for example, you go back to 2020, Biden was leading in June, I believe. If you go back to June of 2020, so June 1st, for instance, of 2020, Biden was leading by 5.2%. Yet in the actual election, he ended up leading in the state of Michigan by 2.8%. Yet in June of 2020, when you go back to June of 2020, you could see that Biden was actually leading by approximately 7.5%. That means that the polling data overestimated Biden in June when you compare that to the general election by around 5%, according to RCP. Some other polling data that you might want to be familiar with, and that is the state of, again, these are all before the conviction. All right, keep that in mind. Before the conviction, North Carolina. All right, North Carolina, Trump's leading by 4.8% currently, 4.8%. If you go back to 2020, June 2nd of 2020, it was almost effectively pretty close there. June 2nd of 2020, Trump at that time was, I believe, let's go back to June 20. So June 1st of 2020, it was a tie at the time, and Trump's leading by 4.8%, I believe 4.8%, right? So it's pretty good for Donald Trump. All right, so 4.8% Trump was leading in. So again, this is all before the conviction. So even if he does go down by around 2%, he still would win in the state of North Carolina. And in other states, for example, like Michigan, you could see that the polling data did overestimate Joe Biden. All right, so that is with regards to that particular information. But make sure you, if you like this video, make sure to subscribe button down below and like the video. Write it in the comment section. I'm really unsure at this point whether or not it's going to help or hurt Donald Trump. I'm very interested. And as far as the tilt columns and the likely columns are concerned, I don't base it entirely off of whether or not it's within that 10 to 15% range. I base it off of several factors. 10 to 15% is one of those factors that I consider, although not entirely. Okay. But Donald Trump at 315 electoral votes, Joe Biden at 223 electoral votes. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe button down below and like the video. Comment down below again if you think it's gonna hurt or help Donald Trump. And also video suggestions would be helpful for any video suggestions that you may have. And I'll see you in the next video.